Hello and welcome to the Daily Faded. My name is Hetz, and this is where we get faded daily and talk about politics and news. So I hope you are enjoying me at your safe home. I hope you're staying safe at home, and I hope you're having a drink or maybe taking a toke along with me. We've got a lot to talk about today. Smoking one of my favorite strains, Face Off, tonight. It's good for the back pain. Normally I don't do a show on Saturdays, but I missed my Tuesday show, and I want to make sure I do 4 shows a week. So here I am doing a Saturday show. Obama criticized Trump today. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on. That is apparently big news. I imagine we're going to start hearing more and more from Obama because I think he desperately does not want another 4 years of Trump, and he's going to be pulling out all the stops for Joe Biden. That is my prediction, as he should. You know, from strictly party politics standpoint, he's the most popular Democrat in the country. He's one of the most popular politicians in the country, certainly the most popular ex-president. Although, I don't know, Jimmy Carter's pretty popular too. But we're going to be hearing a lot more from Obama, so I suspect what we heard today was really just the beginning. I do really want to smoke some more, so hold on one sec. All right. Well, you may not have heard the most recent numbers, so I'm here to update you. There's really nothing cheerful in the show tonight, nothing at all that's fun to talk about. But we'll get through it all together, smoke our way through. You know what I'm saying? Worldwide, there are over 4.7 million confirmed cases of the coronavirus. Obviously, the true infection rate is many times that higher. There have been over 313,000 confirmed coronavirus deaths around the world. The United States, we crossed 1.5 million confirmed cases, and we have crossed 90,000 deaths. We're at 90,113 deaths here in the United States. And every one of those, a living, breathing person with family and friends and fathers and sons and daughters and uncles and aunts and so on and so forth. And the tragedy just continues. We were under 1,000 in the death count today, at least if what I saw was accurate. So that's slightly good news. It's not good news, but it's not as bad news as the 1,500 to 2,000 that we've been seeing over the last several days. And here in California, we're at 78,685 cases, 3,208 deaths in the great state of California. And every one of those deaths is a tragedy, of course. And yet, I'm happy to live in California. I feel safer here than just about anywhere else in the country. The IHME model, University of Washington Institute of Health Metrics Evaluation model that has been cited frequently by the White House in the past, but no more, because it is going up, and it's gone up again. We talked about this earlier this week or late last week, but it's gone up again, and it's now projecting 147,000 dead by August 4th. So that's bad news. That's bad news. Jamie McGeever from Reuters tweeted today, Brazil moves up to 4th in global ranking of confirmed coronavirus cases, surpassing Italy and Spain. Health Ministry confirms 14,909 new cases, taking total to 233,142. Also reports 816 new deaths, bringing total to 15,633. And here we see another science denier and climate denier, Jair Bolsonaro, who has been completely insane during this pandemic and really done things that have flown in the face of science. He's doing a lot of the same things Trump did: early denial, failure to test, failure to take care of people. They didn't close things up in Brazil, or not nearly enough. I had this idea. I had a joint that they gave me at my dispensary. I also bought a face mask for my dispensary so I could advertise for them. Yes, I paid to advertise for them. Yes, that's right. But they gave me a free joint, and I was like, I'm going to do a show where I smoke the entire joint and see if I can make it through all the news. Because normally smoking like a whole joint should be enough to get you very stoned. But I ended up smoking that joint on a Zoom call with a bunch of my friends, and it was weak. It was weak sauce. So I'm glad I didn't do that for a show. I spared you. Hill was reporting more than 180 churchgoers were told to self-quarantine after attending a Mother's Day service in Northern California, where at least one person tested positive for COVID-19. The person tested positive the day after the service, Butte County Public Health Department announced Friday. Seeing these things all over the place, and the question is, what are they going to add up to? CNN reported across 37 states, 88 inmates and 15 correctional staffers died from COVID-19 between January 21st and April 21st, according to the CDC. In all, 4,893 inmates tested positive, as did 2,778 correctional staff. And that's only up through April 21st. We've heard story after story after story of large amounts of inmate populations catching COVID-19. So there are several major COVID-19 problems and have had people die and have lost both staffers and inmates. So that's a huge problem, and it's a problem that's going completely unaddressed by our lawmakers. Everything they take into consideration, they don't take into consideration the lives of people who are in prison, whose lives matter as much as anybody else's life, as far as I'm concerned. You're in prison for whatever you're in prison for. It's not a death sentence. You shouldn't have to die from COVID-19. For Christ's sakes, they could at least keep enough soap in the prisons. I saw one story where, I believe it was in an immigrant detention center, they couldn't get enough soap supplied to the place for people to be able to wash their hands and maintain some kind of sanitary lifestyle. So we've done virtually nothing. It's the prisoners and detainees are the lowest rung of American society. No one looks out for them, which is part of why I loved Bernie Sanders' criminal justice platform so much, because he recognized their basic human rights. And of course, prisons are just another congregant setting that is the usual hotspot for COVID-19, like nursing homes and meatpacking plants. CNN, you may have seen this today. There was a picture, I saw this on CNN, There was a picture that went viral of a cafe in Germany where they put pool noodles on hats sticking in 4 directions so that you could use the pool noodle for social distancing. And people say Germans don't have a sense of humor. Clearly they do. It was a very cool picture. Someday I'll be high tech enough that I could actually show you something like that. But I'm not there yet. I'm working on it. Craig Reznicki on Twitter summed up Trump today. We're not going to do a long Trumpaganda segment tonight because I don't fucking want to talk about Trump. I'm sick of Trump. In the past 24 hours, Trump has, this was the tweet, said super duper missile, named a plan Operation Warp Speed. That's the plan to get the vaccine. Operation Warp Speed. That makes a lot of sense. And placed his head on Bill Pullman's body in a clip from Independence Day. Check his Twitter feed if you want to see more on that. It's humiliating that our president is such a man-child. And then he finished his tweet with, "It's official, we're living in Spaceballs. Up next, Trump will owe Pizza the Hut $1 million space bucks." I totally butchered reading that poor guy's tweet. Jesus Christ. I separated the punchline from the rest of the tweet. He shouldn't let stoned people follow him on Twitter. Clearly. 50 Wisconsin voters and poll workers. 50 Wisconsin voters and poll workers have tested positive for COVID-19 after the April 7th election in Wisconsin that never should have happened. How many more people were exposed to the virus other than those 50? How many more contracted the virus at the polling places? Milwaukee was reduced to 5 polling places from over 100, reduced to 5 polling places for a city of 592,000 people. Think of that. They had over 100 polling places, but then on the day that they actually voted, they had only 5 because poll workers refused to come in. Poll workers, you've seen them. They're usually older. It was crazy for them to hold that election. It was criminal. And the election itself was invalid. It was undemocratic. Which brings us to the first story that I wanted to read a little bit from tonight. This was in New York Times a week ago. Will Americans lose their right to vote in the pandemic? By Emily Bazelon. The safest way to cast a ballot will very likely be by mail, but with opposition from the president, limited funding, and time running out, will that option be available? So she goes on to describe the April 7th fiasco in Wisconsin and how the judge extended the absentee voting due date to April 13th, and then that got appealed and it got overturned, and then the governor came in at the last minute and called it off, and that got overturned, and SCOTUS got involved, and all of that crazy disaster. She goes on, quote, "A national election is a giant pop-up event, larger in scale and significance than any other private or public occasion. 2/3 of Americans expect the COVID-19 outbreak to disrupt voting in November, according to a late April survey by the Pew Research Center. A successful election will require some COVID-era changes. The main one is enabling tens of millions more people to vote by mail, also called absentee balloting. The terms are synonymous. Than have ever done so before. It's also important to make adjustments to keep polling places open for people who don't have stable mailing addresses, a group that increases as people are uprooted during an economic downturn or whose disabilities like blindness make it hard to fill out a ballot unassisted." So there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there about how much has to be figured out by how many states. Here in California, we had we had early voting, we had anyone can do absentee voting, and now in November we are all being mailed a ballot. That's the way it should be with nationwide. It's pure and simple. Everyone gets mailed a ballot. You fill it out, you mail it back in. Our military has voted that way for hundreds of years, and no one's ever accused the military of voter fraud. She continues, quote, "The outcome of the presidential contest will most likely be decided in a handful of swing states. This year, the likeliest prospects are Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina, and Arizona. All of them, along with 23 other states and the District of Columbia, already have laws on the books that give voters the right to request an absentee ballot without an excuse. But only one swing state is already set up for most people to vote by mail, Arizona, where 79% did so in 2018. In Florida and Michigan, about 25 to 30% voted by mail that year. In Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, very few voters have voted absentee in a general election. In 2018, the range was from 3 to 6%, according to the Burns Center for Justice at New York University Law School. A total of 27 states fell below 10%, including Georgia and New Hampshire, which also may see close presidential results. Well, we have a troll in the chat who seems to believe in mass voter fraud, which is very nice. I think what that last part really represents is that the states are, California is an exception. The fact that California can figure it out and get it done in time is an exception. Oregon, which already has 100% vote by mail, they don't do any in-person voting. They're ready for this November election. But there needs to be federal money for the states to develop their mail-in voting systems. It just has to happen. To hold an election during a pandemic is undemocratic. When you're telling people you can either vote and have your say in your so-called democracy, or you can vote and you can die, or you can protect yourself by not going out and not vote. That's intimidation. That's suppression 101. Quote, significantly changing how elections are carried out will cost money, and all states face a giant funding gap as they scramble to prepare for the unknowns of November. The Brennan Center for Justice estimates the pandemic-associated costs of properly running the 2020 elections, including the primaries as well as the general, at $4 billion. So far, Congress has promised $400 million, with Democrats pushing for more and Republicans blocking their bills. The debate over funding the Postal Service, which warns it could run out of operating funds at the end of September, is similarly split. In a different world, preparation for the election and its accompanying costs would be non-political. 5 states currently have universal vote by mail, the system of sending all registered voters a ballot without requiring them to request one first. Utah, dominated by Republicans, Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington, where Democrats tend to win, and Colorado, where members of both parties hold major statewide offices. A Reuters poll in April found that 72% of Americans want the government to require mail-in ballots in November to protect voters if the coronavirus continues to pose a threat, including 65% support among Republicans. This is a nonpartisan issue. Some Republican officials share the majority view. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and the Republican governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, promised voting by mail for all in November. But here's the most important thing, I think, in her article. I'm going to deal with the troll in chat in just a second. Researchers have found that vote by mail hasn't obviously helped one party or the other. Nationwide, about the same share of Republicans and Democrats voted by mail in 2016. Charles Stewart III, a political science professor at MIT, found in partisan terms, it is remarkably neutral, wrote Andrew Hall, a political science professor at Stanford University and an author of a 2020 study, which hasn't yet been published, on voting by mail. Hall's study found that shifting to mailed ballots has modestly increased turnout by about 2%. for each party. A 2013 study found similar results. So one of the things that the data suggests is that the idea that vote by mail increases voter turnout and increased voter turnout always helps the Democrats is not necessarily fundamentally sound logic. The data doesn't particularly back that up. So let's see what Cadillac Tooth DeVille here has to say. The information that will become public will further demonstrate the criminal and corrupt, pure evil abuse of power that the Hussein administration undertook in joint efforts with domestic and foreign dignitaries. Wow, this is amazing stuff. The snowball has begun rolling. There is no stopping it now. Stay the course and trust the plan. Protective measures are in place. Remain brave. We knew this day would come. Obama's parents worked on the farm, CIA training facility. Fact. Why did Hussein Barry choose renegade as USSS code name? Define renegade. Hussein Barry. Parents both fluent in Russian. Is Russian a common language to learn? Public career history, mom, dad. Public career history require Russian language as a prerequisite. Farm work takes special skills. Well, I do actually know someone who graduated from the farm, someone I know extremely well. And I loathe the CIA. I absolutely loathe the CIA. And I have always held it against my friend that once in the CIA, always in the CIA. So, but I don't believe Obama's parents were at the farm. I, would like to see a citation for that. I'd like to see a citation for anything on this Obamagate thing. Unmasking is a perfectly normal part of the process that maybe should happen, maybe shouldn't happen. I'd be willing to have that conversation, but I don't think people unmasking Michael Flynn is a big scandal. The Trump administration has unmasked over 100 times already this year. So it's really there is no such thing as Obamagate, Cadillac Tooth DeVille. But I like your screen name. Please feel free to come along and troll anytime. Anyway, I think that the danger of a resurgence or an unwillingness to go to the polls in November 2020 is real. And I don't like to side with the Democrats because I think they're corrupt and I think they're terrible. And okay, troll hidden. Now I forgot what I was saying. I completely forgot what I was saying. So mail-in voting, God damn it. We need universal mail-in voting for November. So there's another article. I kind of wanted to do a little catch-up today because there were a few articles that I had wanted to talk about during the week that I didn't get to for one reason or another. This was a piece in the LA Times by Kate Linthicum, Nabi Boulos, and Anna Ionova on May 11th. Economic upheaval could soon thrust 500 million people into extreme poverty. All right, here we go. Rio de Janeiro. It seemed like Savannah Lima was finally getting ahead. Born and raised in Brazil's drought-ridden Northeast, she moved with her partner to Rio de Janeiro in 2018 in search of work. He was hired as a janitor. She began selling meals on the street, and soon they were bringing in $280 a month, enough to start saving to one day build a house back home. The novel coronavirus pushed that dream out of reach. Lima, who has diabetes and heart problems, putting her at higher risk of dying if she contracts the virus, stopped working once the pandemic took hold in her sprawling slum known as the City of God, which I believe there was a movie about by the same name. Yes, little Maui Wowie on top of the face-off. Now it seems that if the coronavirus doesn't kill her, hunger may. Quote, we have to pay the rent and we don't have the money, said Lima, 48. I haven't even been able to buy beans. So we have human stories of tragedy, of people suffering and dying alone in hospitals, and stories of human suffering of people finding themselves in living conditions that are inhumane, to say the least. Stories like this are absolutely tragic, and we have to always remember that we have a permanent underclass in the world. We have a permanent underclass in the United States, and it's on us as a society and it's on us as a world to take care of them. That's just where I'm coming from, my own personal beliefs. They write, the economic devastation the pandemic wreaks on the ultra poor could ultimately kill more people than the virus itself. The United Nations predicts that a global recession will reverse a 3-decade trend in rising living standards and plunge as many as 420 million people into extreme poverty, defined as earning less than $2 a day. As for the 734 million people already there, I make less than $2 a day. As for the 734 million people already there, the economic tsunami will make it harder for them to climb out. I feel like we're watching a slow motion train wreck as it moves through the world's most fragile countries, said Nancy Lindberg, president of the nonprofit U.S. Institute of Peace and former head of the Ebola Task Force at the U.S. Agency for International Development. So, I mean, again, what this gets to is, look, I believe we need an economic Bill of Rights in the United States. I don't believe any American should be without housing and food, and I don't believe any American should be denied health care or education, period. So I support a UBI that would cover housing in a major metropolitan area and food in a major metropolitan area. And people who live in places with a lower standard of living, it'll go further for them. And then free healthcare and free education. That's what I believe in. And I believe that's a human right. And I think it's as important in the slums of Rio de Janeiro as it is in Los Angeles, as it is to me personally, as it is to people I know. All of the money is flowing in one direction. All of the money is flowing in one direction. And the poor have no basic human rights. She goes on, they go on. Hunger is already rising in the poorest parts of the world, where lockdowns and social distancing measures have erased incomes and put even basic food items out of reach. In Guatemala, villagers are begging for food along highways by waving pieces of white cloth at passing drivers. And in Guatemala, at one point, half of the COVID positive cases that they had were people who had been deported there from the United States. It was a huge number that we deported to Guatemala who were infected. In Colombia, the hungriest hang red flags from their homes in hope of donations. Recent phone surveys in places as disparate as Senegal and rural China suggest that large swaths of society have lost their livelihoods and, as a result, are eating less. The UN predicts the coronavirus could push an additional 130 million people to the brink of starvation by the end of 2020. World Vision, an international Christian aid organization, warns that 30 million children are at risk of dying. I want to stress that we are not only facing a global health pandemic, but also a global humanitarian catastrophe, said David Beasley, executive director of the UN's World Food Program. So we're awfully concerned with everything here at home, but we've got to be in solidarity with people around the world, with people who are suffering terrible economic devastation around the world. Boy, I wish I could remember who, but someone was calling for debt cancellation for debt-ridden nations, and I think there could be no better time for debt cancellation policies than now. The International Monetary Fund approves countries going into third world countries and buying up public resources and privatizing them and financializing them and loading these countries up with debt and taking their ability to extract their own resources away from them so that they can't actually pay off their debt. So these countries are countries that are being fucked by the neoliberal international economic hegemony to begin with. And now they get hit with a crisis like this, and it pushes so many people straight off a cliff. Poverty is a policy choice. The IMF and the way it structures loans are policy choices, and they're really good for vulture capitalists and not really good for much of anything else. So there's that. And then, of course, we have our Barack Obama story to end with here. And it's actually not the last thing I'm going to end with. I have something a little extra special tonight, along with Maui Wowie. My wife just walked out onto the patio. Shh, don't tell her I'm smoking weed. We'll take the report from the New York Times on Obama today. New York Times, Obama says U.S. lacks leadership on virus in commencement speeches. The virus has, quote, torn back the curtain on the idea that the folks in charge know what they're doing, the former president said. Quote, a lot of them aren't even pretending to be in charge. Without the springtime rituals of traditional graduation ceremonies, former President Barack Obama delivered 2 virtual commencement addresses on Saturday, urging millions of high school and college graduates to fearlessly carve a path and to seize the initiative at a time when he says the nation leaders have fumbled the response to the coronavirus pandemic. I wish Barack Obama had seized the initiative to pass a public option when he had a supermajority in the Senate. I wish. Think of how much better off we would be today if he had had vision he's calling for when it counted. The speeches, aired hours apart, combined the inspirational advice given to graduates, build community, do what is right, be a leader, with pointed criticism of the handling of an outbreak that has killed more than 87,000 Americans and crippled much of the economy. And as we said earlier tonight, we are over 90,000 Americans dead right now. Quote, more than anything, this pandemic has finally torn back the curtain on the idea that so many of the folks in charge know what they're doing, end quote, Mr. Obama said in his first address directed at graduates of historically black colleges and universities. Quote, a lot of them aren't even planning to be in charge. Although Mr. Obama did not mention President Trump by name, some saw his comments as criticism of his successor. President Trump's unprecedented coronavirus response has saved lives, Haley McEnany, the White House press secretary, said in a statement that cited the administration's travel restrictions, small business loan program, and use of the private sector, quote, to fill the stockpile left depleted by his predecessor. Oh, yes, the old blame Obama game. They're so good at blaming Obama. I seem to remember mentioning Bush in Obama's third year was verboten. Obama was responsible for everything. In speeches that spoke to social inequities, Mr. Obama said the pandemic was a wake-up call for young adults, showing them the importance of good leadership and that, quote, the old ways of doing things just don't work. The old ways of doing things just don't work, said former President Barack Obama. The old ways of doing things just don't work. Obama oversaw job creation of low wage and minimum wage jobs. Obama oversaw the creation of the gig economy, which is the biggest labor ripoff in this country in generations. Union membership did not expand under Obama. And other than the Lilly Ledbetter Act, which was one of, if not the first piece of legislation that he signed, I am at a loss to tell you what Barack Obama did for workers in America in the 8 years that he was president. He put into place a healthcare system that was full of price gouging. Yes, a lot of people got healthcare who didn't have healthcare, and that's a good thing. But nothing was put into the system to control costs. So Obama is talking about finally torn back the curtain. It's finally torn back the curtain, he said. It's crazy listening to Obama talk now because he talks about, well, we need to have new ideas, and one time he almost said he supported Medicare for all. He didn't quite say that. And yet this is the guy who called Pete Buttigieg and convinced him to drop out and endorsed Joe Biden the day after South Carolina, right before Super Tuesday. This is the guy whose fingerprints are all over Amy Klobuchar dropping out and Beto O'Rourke endorsing Joe Biden right before the Texas primary. Joe Biden is the candidate who told a bunch of Wall Street executives things won't change. Things will be fundamentally the same. So what is Obama talking about here? Obama continued, doing what feels good, what's convenient, what's easy. That's how little kids think, he said during a primetime special for high school seniors. Unfortunately, a lot of so-called grown-ups, so condescending, including some with fancy titles and important jobs, still think that way, which is why things are so screwed up. I hope that instead you decide to ground yourself in values that last, like honesty, hard work, responsibility, fairness, generosity, respect for others. So I just don't really appreciate lectures from Barack Obama. He was a Nobel Peace Prize winner who had a kill list. He turned 2 wars into 7 wars. He did not close Guantanamo Bay. I could go on. However, there's one thing I'd love to see. And that's the pandemic preparedness report that Barack Obama left for Donald Trump. I'd like to read that. It's, I believe, 87 pages long, and I would thoroughly like to read that. So I look forward to it being made public at some point in the future. Because for all of the bad shit that I will say about Obama, I would prefer Obama be president during this pandemic than Donald Trump by many, 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 many miles. Hold on one sec. I want to go out tonight with the words of Isaac Brock. This song has been the anthem for me lately. The good times are killing me, Modest Mouse. The good times are killing me. Here we go. Got dirt, got air, got water, and I know you can carry on. Shrug off short-sighted false excitement, and oh, what can I say? Have one, have 20 more, one more's, and oh, does it not relent? The good times are killing me. Kick butt buzz cut dickheads who didn't like what I said. The good times are killing me. Jaws clenched tight, we talked all night. Oh, but what the hell did we say? The good times are killing me. The good times are killing me. The good times are killing me. Fed up with all that LSD. Need more sleep than coke or methamphetamines. Late nights with warm whiskey. I guess the good times, they were all just killing me. Got dirt, got air, got water, and I know you can carry on. The good times are killing me. Enough. Okay, I'm not sitting around doing LSD for what it's worth, but I can't get that song out of my head. The good times are killing me. And I hope that's never literally going to be true. But thank you for tuning in tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon patrons. You guys, it's all for you. And subscribe and hit the like button and follow me on Twitter at @the_Hetz. All right, guys. Peace out.